back. The NEC of Nigeria Labour Congress had an emergency meeting yesterday, and so that is part of what we're going to focus on this morning. Mr. Mecha Suguni joins us now. He's the former deputy president of NLC. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. So just a quick one. Yes, we've seen that release from Labour's NEC in terms of state of the economy and worsening economic situation, and some of the resolutions and recommendations there. They talk about how they wanted the government to come up with a wide range of economic solutions and policies. But many would always say, look, we've been through this road before. Labour has come up with this kind of narrative before. But what is not exactly clear to people is what this means in terms of Labour's next steps about these matters.
Yeah, good morning, Chamberlain. If we are truly referring to the NEC press release as regards the minimum wage non-implementation by some states, is that where we're paying attention strictly? So we need to understand that labor matters are indeed not far from each other when we refer to the history of his narrative. And that is to say, when people say we've heard this before, they are right, because labor has always been engaged in negotiation year in, year out, both at the private sector level and public sector. Whether we like it or not, by 2 years or so to come, another negotiation will still be in place, and this similar directive or effort to implement minimum wage will also be enforced. This is part of NLC obligation to ensuring that agreement put in place are not just papers on the table, but to materialize to benefit the workers. And that can only yield result when you enforce the implementation. What they have done so far is to carry out its constitutional duty to enforce state implementation of minimum wage. We all know that some governors, even before now, have cried that 30,000 was much to pay. Then now that minimum wage is 70,000, you need to push harder to enforce those states to comply to the law. Unfortunately, without push, they may not be compliant. And then NLC must be pushed to push. And that is the pressure they are facing. So managing that pressure, they must issue directive. That's what I think the National Executive Council had done in compliance with the rules of engagement.
How many states do you envisage, or how many states do you have concrete information are currently in breach or are unwilling to pay the new minimum wage of 70,000 naira?
But for purposes of mentioning some state and leaving some unidentified, so that doesn't look like NSC is actually selective. I think I would make a package statement that there are states, notable states, that have gone above minimum wage, which we have seen. There are some that have also complied, which we have seen. There are some that are yet to make statement. They are even yet to meet with their state executive in order to adopt what has been agreed at the national level and define modality for implementation. So the interest here will be that what will NLC do to this state that have actually remained adamant to implementation.
Now the question is, how many of those states are currently in breach? How many of those states that you say have not even held a meeting, they have not made a statement, how many do you have of them in total?
Now, definitely that I need to check the record in order to be sure. I don't just want to quote and then possibly may miss the number.
Yeah, but at the last count, how many are you in the know of?
Why I'm skeptical about calling number here is because it's immaterial, whether it's one state, whether it's 10 states. What matters is what will NLC be doing to those states that have failed to implement the minimum wage. So that is why I'm paying attention to the action of proposed action of Congress towards those states. The number for now does not change the strategy.
I understand. I mean, I certainly understand the stance of NLC. It's always about injury to one is injury to all. And so for you, you know, as long as one state is affected, but this is just to give a general picture of the level of compliance. That's why I wanted to be able to measure? Or do we have up to, say, 15 states that are in the breach, 16, 19, 20 that are unwilling to pay? That just to give an idea to Nigerians, about the level of compliance that we're seeing. As you said, we have a number of states that notably gone above what is the minimum wage and have set a new minimum in their own states. But just to have an idea of how many, but it doesn't appear you have that number now, do you?
Yeah, I don't have the number because some have not implemented, some have defined method to start implementation, some are about to commence, and because of that, you may be concluding on a number that eventually today, some states may even kickstart implementation. So I want to be careful with the number, but I tell you, some states provocatively have refused to attend to minimum wage demand, and the NLC has also, in line with its obligation, called for this very directive. And I think those
you just said provocatively. I imagine that you're angry enough to mention their names, are you?
No. It's not.
You're not angry enough to mention, even though they're provoking you. Okay, then.
We're angry enough to propose the action needed to enforce the implementation.
Well, we're not going to know what state is implementation, because you have asked your workers to go on strike by a certain day in those states that have refused to implement the minimum wage. Isn't that correct?
Yes, NLC has issued such circular to members. And why they were in that blanket offer is because if NLC lists the name of state and upon release of that circular, they had gone ahead to implement, they will need to issue a new circular. And that is why you see NLC is directing that any state that has failed to. So it's now depending on the state ESCO of NLC to review the status quo at their state level. What is the position of the state as against the minimum wage? And where steps have not been taken to enforce implementation, proceed on the 1st of December to ensure that workers withdraw their service in order to draw strong attention and make every possible effort that the state think towards implementation of minimum wage as a priority of the state. Because we have always emphasized that most governors don't see salary of workers as a priority. Yet, on daily basis, they approve certain money for certain purposes, neglecting this very portion of their obligation as employers. Is also a very serious attempt. Negation to workers' effort to work is a threat to workers themselves. And we must do everything within the law to call them to order.
Your communique from the NEC meeting was very extensive. I'd like to take you up on this issue of petrol pricing. Number 3 on the communique. Petrol pricing and the urgent need for activating public refineries. You talked about how you believe that the public can currently be, it does appear that the public is being ripped off with the current, by those who control the levers of economic power in Nigeria, which explains why the domestic public refineries may not be immediately allowed to come on stream. Now, what exactly would you say has given rise to this particular thinking, this thinking that there is inappropriate pricing of petrol locally as a result of the conflicts we've seen between the NNPC marketers, the Dangote refinery, etc.? What precisely would you say has happened to give rise to this notion?
The notion is born out of the inconsistency we have suffered over time as regards the management of and the schedule of both importation and the pricing release by NNPC. And if you watch what has happened, especially right from the time Dangote announced his readiness to commence disposition of the same product, we have been hearing, it comes like rumor, there's a counter pronouncement and all the rest. So NLC is of the opinion that the inability of government to have factor reasons to enable our local refineries to work, until that is done, this quagmire will continue because of there is no transparency in the accountability of what comes into the country and what is consumed by Nigerians. And such report can never be actual. And therefore, we are creating scarcity indirectly. We also ensure that we are paying subsidy. At the same time, the subsidy is paid for Nigerians and beyond, because the product is extending beyond this country. So a lot of abnormalities that are holding in Nigeria as regards PMS, both the product and the pricing, is such that the only way to checkmate, the only way to evaluate and ensure that the right thing is done is to make our local refineries work, so that from production to refine point, Nigerians will keep record of what is happening. This idea of exporting crude and what you are bringing in, you are the only one that knows what went out. You are the only one that will tell Nigerians what you have brought in. And at the end of the day, is figures we hear. We don't see volume. So you cannot trace the actual consumption to the source of importation. And they're taking advantage of the inability of Nigerians to access this record. What we normally hear is GMD of NNPC come on television or anywhere here to tell you we have spent so amount on this. The indices on how they spend this money and how they generate it is unknown to Nigerians. And that is where the corruption lies. So the refinery must work in order to cure this fear.
Well, we see that the NLC is equally commenting on the developments in rivers. But the court has ruled, so one wonders, what is NLC doing wading into rivers politics?
It may be on personal assumption and position. Don't forget, freedom of participation on issues allows individuals to express their view on any political, on any point, on any issue whatsoever. So if NLC, depending on the officer that have made his position on any matter, that does not change the position of law with regards to Rivers State issue.
So what's the point? What point are they trying to make? If the court has ruled, then the other party is supposed to appeal it. And since they've appealed, what's NLC's comment here? Because it matters little, because it is what the court decides that will eventually hold sway.
But it depends on the position of NLC that you're referring to. What did NLC say that calls for attention? What position of NLC are we actually referring to in this matter?
Well, you see here, NLC is asking that they are suggesting that the decision is going to deprive the people of Rivers of their revenue. And so that presupposes that the court was wrong in that instance. And everybody knows that, I mean, the NLC should know themselves. The processes, the legal processes, has already kicked in. So commenting on this matter is tantamount to them being meddlesome in this case. Many will think that way.
As a person, as a consultant and expert in trade union, my position on that is for the fact that the matter is before the law will take its course, the wrong indeed will be made right. So anything that is before the court of law may not be subject for public discourse. Otherwise, one may be accused of intruding. So for me, NLC position there should be taken as a corporate view on a particular matter. Because even lawyers reserve right to make comment after judgment on any particular matter. And whatever that has been said there should be considered as their opinion in the judgment, and not necessarily asking to set aside the judgment of the court of law.
So as we wind down on this one, could you then tell us, to be issuing these press release or press releases lately from the NLC, it gets people wondering, has NLC lost its steam? Because now petrol prices appear to be taking a life of their own now, and NLC, little or no impact. People don't seem to be looking to NLC as their savior anymore.
As a matter of fact, if I must speak to Nigerians, this issue is gone beyond organized labor. The issue at hand is about Nigerians' destiny. It's about the future of our children. It's about the integrity of Nigeria as a country. And the area will stop putting our trust and possibly relying on institution stake to be the stake of all. The earlier, the better, because don't forget, NLC has its members to protect, and it's only when these workers are affected in policy, they cry out, and when they are also when they are invited for a meeting and certain actions are taken to cushion the effect on workers, this same NLC, I believe, will have reason to accept government position on some issues. But if we're waiting for NLC alone to drive the affairs of Nigeria for the interest of the whole country, they may not meet up that obligation anytime soon. And therefore, Nigerians will begin to think of what we must do as a people. We have seen in other countries, it's not organized labor that lead them when they want to protest. When they want to say no to a particular policy or hardship, it is not NLC that drove the NSAS agenda in Nigeria. It was not NLC that led the bad governance agitation. I think when people think that a particular policy or action is affecting them, people must speak out, and by speaking out, they form unity that will eventually lead the people out. That kind of protest is what makes government to make revision. Otherwise, NLC is guided by constitution, they are guided by law, and anything they do has to be within the confine of their own jurisdiction. So I believe that the issue of price increase and the hardship we are facing now is a matter that goes beyond the fuel increment. How did we get here? Do you know that nobody is talking about the electronic voting system in Nigeria? How do we prevail on National Assembly to do that? There should be a separate protest in that regard to demand for instrument that will get us leaders that will be our leader. You can only be my leader when I participate in a system that brought you to power, gave Nigerians room to choose so. Look at what just happened in America. And the incumbent was fast to admit results.
So NLC is literally telling us now we're largely on our own to a large extent.
NLC has never been the one responsible for the failure we are facing. NLC has never been the one responsible for the failure that we are facing in Nigeria. NLC has always stood in trying to fight for their members. Indirectly, it also benefits ordinary Nigerians. So anytime they delay in taking certain steps, the ordinary Nigerian on the street will feel that NLC is not doing its best. Whereas NLC follows procedure to write letter to employers, make demand. NLC will not write to government about tomato. NLC will be telling them that workers' wage need to be increased. And don't forget, we have less than 20 million of Nigerians that are affiliated to Nigerian labor movement. That means if we're increasing salary of this 20 million, what about the 200 and something million left? Who will speak for them? So I tell you the NLC agenda, when they propose to go on strike, government reserve the right to invite them for a meeting, promise them benefit for decent workers, and NLC also have the right at that time to call off the strike because members have gotten benefit. This same benefit may not go to ordinary Nigerians. And therefore, ordinary Nigerians must know that it is their own time to take their destiny in their hand and do so now.
All right, Comrade Amaechi Asuguni, former Deputy President of NLC, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain and Co.
All right, so there you go.
So suddenly a new perspective, encouraging Nigerians to take their matters in their own hands and not wait for the NLC. I didn't see that response coming.
Well, I think it was just a matter of when, not if, because many had thought there was always going to be a limit. So is NLC helpless now? Who knows? All right, there you go. That wraps it up today. We do thank you all for your time. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Oh, we wish you a very productive Monday and week. Thank you for watching. I'm Mao Yusuf. See you soon.